Welcome back to Conversations on Deck. And today, folks, it's Topps Wednesday. We're looking at this 1988 Blue Jays leader card with its very own piece of gum. And I think George Bell and Lloyd Moseby are checking that gum out and talking about it, saying, man, how did we get the gum on the back of our card? And Nolan Ryan, he had his own card. Danny Ainge had his own card. I mean, come on, folks. Well, let's look at the 1988 Toronto Blue Jays. They finished third in the AL East. They had an 87-75 record. They were managed by none other than Jimmy 1M Williams. And here's the crew. Ernie Whitt at catcher. Fred McGriff at first. Manuel Lee at second. Tony Fernandez at shortstop. Kelly Gruber, third base. George Bell, left field. Lloyd Moseby, center field. Jesse Barfield in right. Rance Mullenix in DH. What a great last name. Dave Stieb, the all-star representative of the team, 16-8. And Tom Henke with 25 saves. And here's a fun quote from Bill Buckner about Dave Stieb. Speaking of the all-star Dave Stieb, quote, "What is it with that guy? You get a hit, and he stares over at you at first, like you've done something wrong." End quote. Yeah, Bill, you have. You got a hit off of him. Or maybe a walk. Dave Stieb, ultimate competitor. Probably was real competitive in Little League, too, or playing wiffle ball, or just marbles, or, who could order their McDonald's order the quickest. I don't know, Bill, but it sounds like Dave Stieb was very competitive. Here's another quote from Jimmy Key in 1992. This is after the World Series. Quote, "To be part of the first professional baseball world championship team in Canada is the highlight of my career." End quote. That's right. Jimmy Williams was a manager of a lot of these guys who went on to win the World Series in 1992. And to be the first team to do it, man, I think that's pretty awesome. And, pretty amazing. It'd be interesting to hear what some of these guys would have said about the Blue Jays team last year, who just came up oh so short. Well, 1988 was a great year. We like to say, those of us around 88 was great, and that was the year I graduated from high school, so it was true. Well, here's another highlight in 88 that featured none other than Toronto Blue Jays George Bell, because he crushed, destroyed, annihilated 3 home runs off of Brett Saberhagen on opening day, a first in baseball history, and it happened at Royal Stadium. And back in 88, to hit 3 home runs in the same game, opening day, against the likes of Brett Saberhagen, man, that was quite the accomplishment. Here's what Royals catcher Mike McFarland said about those 3 home runs. Quote, "The first one was a fastball up and in, and he tomahawked it. The second was a breaking ball down and away, and he golfed it with one arm. The third was a fastball in, and he turned on it." End quote. I'm pretty sure George Bell was, MVP the season before, and man, he was a terror in the batting box. And then I had heard that in '88, he and Jimmy Williams were kind of feuding at spring training, because Jimmy said, "Okay, George, you're going to be my DH starting the season." And George was not happy. And opening day, 3 baseballs took the punishment, the angst of George Bell. All right, so we talked a little bit about Fred McGriff a little bit earlier. Here's what Ernie Whitt, the catcher, said about the crime dog, Fred McGriff. Quote, "He was just so steady. He was just a calming baseball player that put up numbers year in, year out. He was a great guy in the clubhouse." End quote. You know what? And he's a Hall of Famer. And that's what you want in a teammate. You want somebody that is steady, but you also want somebody who is consistently productive. They're doing the work, putting in the extra work, most likely, And you want somebody who's great in the clubhouse, somebody who's going to be fun, but also know when you got to be serious and rally the team. So speaking of Fred McGriff, he gets the last quote. And here's his quote about the manager, Jimmy Williams. I love Jimmy Williams with one M because he was Red Sox manager as well. And here's what Fred McGriff said about Jimmy Williams. Quote, he was a baseball man. He loved baseball. He knew baseball. He taught baseball. End quote. What a compliment from a Hall of Famer to say that about his manager. Not like he's a jerk or he doesn't know anything or never does anything. He just sits on the bench and chews tobacco or big league chew or whatever. No, he was a baseball man. He loved baseball. He lived it. He learned it. And then he passed it on to his players. Great lesson for us all in whatever we do. So I hope you had a great Tops Wednesday. Have a great day, folks.